Hello, we're trying to warp your perception of technology through Hollywood.
They're back.
Look out for Charlie.
I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head.
Okay, I want to talk about a specific case here. This is not a Voice of God weapons case. However, it plays out just like a Voice of God weapons case where someone is driven to do something crazy because they are under a fear and bewilderment stage. It is so close to how this works, it's amazing. Let's check out what they have to say about it.
It happened in Springfield, Ohio, that's near Dayton, and that's where an 81-year-old man faces a murder charge tonight after allegedly shooting an Uber driver in his driveway. Police say the shooter and the victim were both the target of the same scammer.
This morning, authorities warning the public.
Okay, let's be clear. This is not a scammer. They are downplaying it. Everywhere you look, they are downplaying this and calling it a scammer. A scammer did something. It's not a scammer, and people need to get that straight.
After a phone scam turned fatal, this dramatic dashcam video capturing the deadly confrontation between a female Uber driver and an Ohio homeowner last month after authorities say they were both unknowingly targeted by scammers.
Lalitha Hall screamed for help as William Brock confronted her with a gun.
Yes, I know what you're after.
But as the Uber driver tried to flee, police say the 81-year-old resident shot her multiple times.
Well, I shot her in the leg the first time, and I shot her in the shoulder.
Why did you do that?
Because I was threatened that she was going to come and kill me.
Reports say while officials were on scene, Brock's landline phone kept ringing, and when one officer picked it up, the man on the other line said he was an officer. And the real officer explained what happened and asked the caller to meet. And he agreed, but never showed up.
Now, let me reiterate again that this was not a scam, as they are calling it. This guy was clearly targeted because he was older and he owned firearms. He had received calls over and over by this person saying that they were going to come and rob him, kill him, and I believe they even described who was coming to get the money or whatever. What they did then was they then called the Uber driver and sent the Uber driver over there to pick up a package, knowing that this guy was going to pull out a gun. They knew that he owned firearms. And how? I'm not positive, but it is easy to find out if people own firearms, whether that be registration, sometimes the web, and usernames, forums, stickers on a home or a car, mail. There are seriously 1,000 ways to figure this out. And this is exactly what they did. I don't know how high up they were, whether they could check the registration, or whether they were down low and figured it out through mail or stickers or whatever. You know, some people have NRA stickers on their campers, for example, shit like that. This was intentional. There was higher tech involved. The caller knew that the guy owned a weapon, I'm sure of that. The caller knew that the woman had been shot somehow because he called back when the police were there. So they could obviously hear what was happening. Let's check out what somebody else said about that, and we'll come back to this.
I don't know if her camera was hacked in her vehicle. I don't know if they hacked her cell phone and was able to get video or audio or something. But they knew that she was shot. The people who set this whole deal up, the scammers, they somehow knew.
They're not scammers. These guys set up a murder, a flat-out murder.
And when police showed up on the scene, the man who shot this woman's phone was ringing off the hook. One of the police that showed up on the scene answered the phone, and the person on the other side of the phone said that they were the police. I got chills. I mean, that is some high-level hackery going.
It's beyond high-level hackery. They knew that he owned firearms, or else they would have never done this. They knew exactly what they were doing. Why send a woman over to an old man's house? The only way you would do that is if you knew they owned a gun and something crazy might happen. There is no way that this was just a scammer. And this played out just like Voice of God weapons do. They get people worked up, and then they panic and do something. So let's take the Lars Matank case, for example. He was hearing voices, and he was in a doctor's office at an airport. A worker who was working in the place walked in. and he yelled out, "I don't want to die here," and ran off, and he was never seen again. So, you know, you can imagine that if someone has a gun and they're saying, we're coming over right now, and then, you know, like a UPS guy or something shows up, and then the guy, like, opens fire on him, you know, we're coming over in disguise, you know, that is how this happens. What proves this is the fact that they knew she was shot because they called back as the police, calling over and over and over as the police. They knew what happened. So there's something going on there. This isn't a scammer, as they're calling it everywhere. This is a fucking setup. I'm telling you, this is exactly how voice of God weapons play out on people, especially when they target somebody with a firearm. They do the exact same thing to them. So again, what they did was they called the man and threatened him over and over and said, we're going to come kill you, you know, blah, 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 blah. Then they called the Uber driver and convinced her to go over and pick up a package there. So that's exactly how this shit plays out. They were setting up basically a voice of God weapons attack without voice of God weapons because it plays out the exact same way.
So authorities say William Brock had been receiving multiple threatening scam calls the morning of March 25th, or they would kill him and his relative. Around the same time of the call, Lolita Hall received directions from the same person or an accomplice instructing her to go to Brock's home to pick up a package for delivery.
This is always how it plays out. It's just like the case of Adrienne Quintal. She was a firearm owner from Michigan. She left her Michigan home and drove up north to her cabin. Somebody knew she owned a firearm. When she got up there, she began to hear people around her house outside. Didn't see them, but heard them. Then she ended up calling her friend and saying that she got in a firefight with them. And then they found her personal belongings on the roof and she was missing. When they looked around, only bullet holes were leaving the house. So she was shooting out, there was nothing really there. But then they found her dead in a swamp behind her cabin a while later. It is the exact same thing. Those people weren't really there. She believed they were there. She said that there were guys around her cabin and fucking with her cabin. People hear this all the time. A lot of times they believe they're on the roof. A lot of times they believe that they are running around the house, hitting the house, shit like that, and they're not really there. So, you know, these voice of God weapons don't have to be just voices. They can be sounds, they can be footsteps, they can be lots of different things to put the person on edge. It is the exact same way that it played out with the old man. It's just trickery. But the common denominator is they knew that both of these people were firearms owners. Now, let me tell you about something very similar that was described in a movie, of all things. And I'll be spoiling the end of this movie, but it's from 2014. It's called Last Shift. And a rookie officer is on her first night, and she's tasked with guarding this now closed police station because there's a new one. She's guarding it because there's still evidence in it. She is told what to do and that she will be relieved after her shift is over, right? She's also told that a bio crew is coming at some point in the night to pick up all the evidence and move it to the new police station. So during the night, she is systematically driven insane by voices and other shit going on, which coincidentally begin with what? Electrical anomalies and voices coming from the electrical wiring of the station. Voices. Voices right here. So it's, you know, there's all these weird metaphors and shit in the movie. She's really driven insane throughout the night, put completely unnerved, completely paranoid, almost identical to what happened to the old man, right? So you also find out that her dad was a cop who was murdered, which is why she became a police officer. Then, towards the end of the night, she begins to hear the voice of her father, which she is perceiving as a phone call coming from the telephone. Then during one of these voice hearing incidents, the dad warns her that, quote unquote, they are coming, all right, and tells her that she has to do whatever it takes to stop them. So, driven to the point of paranoia and fear, she hears noises and ends up shooting some people, which turn out to be the bio crew.
Help me! Somebody help me! Hey, what are you doing? It's me, I'm Joe from BioClean. I talked to you earlier today.
Drop the weapon!
No, please don't do this.
No!
No.
And then what ends up happening is the cop that is sent to relieve her ends up shooting her. And then it will be thought of as though she just lost her mind, when these voices had driven her insane throughout the entire night. Now they use visuals throughout the whole thing too, ghosts and whatever, but you have to look at it. And when I was watching it with somebody, I said, wow, man, this is exactly how Voice of God attacks are played out. And the person I was watching it with said, what do you mean? Like, I only see like a horror movie, like a typical horror movie. And I go, no. And once it got to the dad telling her, you know, they're coming, you got to keep them out, the person I was watching it with was like, oh, man, I see what you're saying. This is nuts. In both of these cases, the movie and real life, with the old man being set up like that, they're exactly how these Voice of God weapons attacks play out. And I'm hoping that that will help people that don't understand it understand it, because it is a perfect way to show people how these play out so that they can understand what is happening and how it happens. And I hope that you get it from this. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
I don't like the world now. I mean, before I always knew I was a son of a bitch. But now I'm the only son of a bitch I know. Hey, make way for a real human being. Get out of the way, yeah.
Look out for Charlie.
Charlie, what that son of a bitch did? I want him scared.